Well, let's talk about I suppose, it is the woke politics that has afflicted an awful lot of what's going on with the Democrats and indeed the Labour Party, and probably the reason why both are not currently in power. Yesterday before yesterday, we saw yet another woke brand trying to get in on the act, trying to be woker than woke. This time it was Ben and Jerry's. They decided, for some unfeasible reason, that they should tweet a whole load of tweets to the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, about the Channel migrants. Saying, we think the real crisis is our lack of humanity for people fleeing war, climate change and torture. It was a whole stretch of them, and they ended with the words, people cannot be illegal. Well, the backlash was very large and very, very swift as well, including from Priti Patel's own staff and indeed other government ministers. But why do companies do this? Brendan O'Neill is editor of Spiked Online. Good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia.
Hi. We've just seen an ongoing spate of companies wanting to be more woke than woke. We saw it over Black Lives Matter. We saw it over the Me Too movement. We've seen it ever since. Gillette, saying that every man needs to be better. Basically saying, men, you're horrible people, but we'll make you better if you use our razors. Funnily enough, customers don't like being told these things, do they?
No, I think people are sick and tired of this woke capitalism and all these huge brands and corporations lecturing us constantly, whether it's via adverts or social media or on the products themselves. Gillette is the perfect example. This is supposed to be a company that provides decent razors to blokes, and instead it took an opportunity to tell men that they're all sexual harassers and bad fathers and basically evil patriarchs. So, there's a slogan now, go woke, go broke, because Gillette sales seem to have suffered a bit after that. Now, that might be down to the fact that lots of young men are now growing beards, but it also probably was impacted upon by these woke campaigns. I think the owners of big corporations need to realise that people want good products. They don't want to be lectured to.
Yeah, but also people, again, it's the same issue with sport and the whole Black Lives Matter, they're taking the knee. People turn to sport to escape politics when they're having an ice cream with getting their fish food or whatever. I'm personally not a fan of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. My husband and daughter love it, don't really get it. It's too many flavours in one pot for me. I'm a purist. I like my chocolate to be chocolate. But they just want to buy ice cream. And there has been this idea that lots of particularly young consumers want to be associated, they want to buy a brand that has the same values as them. But of course, this has has come back and bitten them in the backside, hasn't it? Because of course, Ben & Jerry's isn't a young and hip and cool brand. It's owned by Unilever, a massive multi-billion-pound international conglomerate. And it turns out that Unilever isn't quite as woke in its background. We've had various different accusations about their treatment of workers, about mercury poisoning in India and taking no more than a decade to pay compensation to the families of those who lost children after they dumped toxic waste. This has now brought an awful lot of attention onto Unilever, which I'm sure they don't want.
Exactly right. The truth of the matter is that Ben & Jerry's, the company, are complete and utter hypocrites because, as you say, they're owned by Unilever, this vast conglomerate, which has been accused by numerous people of failing to protect human rights, of doing pretty bad or dodgy things to its workforce. There was a group of tea plantation workers in Kenya who accused Unilever fairly recently of failing to protect their human rights when there was an outbreak of ethnic violence. And I think that's an ongoing case. And in the US, migrant justice groups have campaigned against Ben & Jerry's because they say that it uses a supply chain which really mistreats workers and forces migrant workers to sleep on bales of straw and so on. So, there are lots of accusations against these companies. And what this ridiculous tirade that Ben & Jerry's made against Priti Patel is simply drawn attention to the fact that these corporations, particularly Unilever, are hardly whiter than white when it comes to the treatment of migrant workers or foreign workers.
I don't know if we're allowed to say that phrase anymore, Brendan. You'll probably be accused of something. What I loved was the backlash to this. And it's interesting because we've had a sort of woke backlashes against people who are perceived to have said or done something, even against an actor, a not black enough actress playing a black part, is the case of an actress who played Nina Simone recently, a non-trans actor playing a trans character, a non-gay character playing a gay character. We've had really nasty, vicious backlashes from the so-called be kind, nice people who consider themselves progressive. I don't think that word applies to them at all. But what I like is actually that we're now turning the tables, and actually when these companies do try and do this going woke thing, saying and telling us, wagging their fingers at us and telling us, or indeed the government, what they should be doing, there is a backlash. And also the mockery. I love the fact, I mean, I've been wondering what Haagen-Dazs make of all of this. As I said on air yesterday, I'm pretty sure Mr. Whippy's in favour of strong borders. Strikes me as a strong border kind of fellow. But I saw a wonderful tweet from saying, what Magnum ice cream, your silence is deafening, not stepping into this issue. And someone replied, well, I would have expected that, given that Magnum colonised chalk ices. I mean, this is the thing, is that the mockery, I think, in the end, is the thing that's going to bring these companies down when they try and do this woke marketing.
Mockery is key to all of this because it is so hilarious. The fact that these billionaires or these billionaire-owned companies are pontificating about issues like this. I mean, it does deserve ridicule. And I think the more of that, the better. I think you're right. There is a growing backlash against woke politics. As you said at the start there, that's probably why Labour and the Democrats are nowhere near power at the moment, because both have fallen for this woke nonsense. And also, if you look at someone like the great Nick Cave, who made a statement yesterday, which I thought was brilliant. He said that political correctness is the unhappiest religion in the world. And he said that woke politics, and especially cancel culture, is the death knell of art and creativity and fun. And I think more and more people are realising that, and the more that we push back against this rubbish, the better.
Yeah, and indeed, and that's the thing, that's that whole phrase of the left will eat itself, is that they're ending up cancelling each other because no one can live up to the standards that they're setting, not even for a week. And given that the rules change roughly on the hour every hour about what you can and can't do and say, it's difficult to keep up. But the main thing is, you mentioned that phrase, get woke, go broke. We have seen that again and again and again. When these companies try and do this stuff to appeal to their little coterie of people on social media, particularly on Twitter. I mean, I love Twitter. It's great fun, but it's mad. It's insane. It's not real life. And people and particularly companies who think that it is, when they'll say, there's been a backlash against something and therefore we're no longer going to take advertising from this company or whatever it is, they think those are real people living in the real world. It'll be 200 students who've all got together and thought something. Everyone else is going about their ordinary life. Really, we need these companies to wake up and realise what the majority of the population thinks. And again, on the issue of migration, the majority of the population think that we should have borders and that we shouldn't actually be welcoming illegal migrants into the country. And it doesn't matter what a woke ice cream company thinks. We're still going to think that.
That's such an important point, because I think so many people, especially woke corporations and celebrities and a lot of journalists, they think Twitter is the real world. So if they get 5,000 retweets, they think they've touched upon public opinion. Very often, the opposite is the case. Twitter is a place for time-rich people who don't work with their hands, people who don't drive buses or look after sick people or teach children or work on a building site. It's for people who are, pretty removed from normal life, who've got plenty of time to spout their nonsense. And I think we have to recognise it's a minority pursuit. I'm sure it's fun for the people who use it, but it's not real life and it's not public opinion.
It really isn't. Brendan O'Neill, editor of Spiked Online, always talking sense. Thank you very much. Benedict Spence, I wonder what you are made of all of this, because I really enjoy it when you get things like Ben and Jerry's doing this sort of nonsense, because everyone does get to mock them and call them out and expose their hypocrisy. But when will they ever learn?
The thing is, actually, I'm very cynical about all of this. I think it's very convenient, isn't it, that a company like Ben and Jerry's that makes ice cream is taking pot shots at the government, just as this government is about to introduce advertising bans on junk food and also try to bring in a sugar tax. I also think it's very curious, isn't it, that even though there's talk of all of this negative press around Ben and Jerry's, actually most people are just going to see that it's trending and that it's making the headlines, and that just happens to be happening in the middle of a heat wave.
They'll go, I'll just go and buy some more Ben and Jerry's. Can I say, though, if they don't like what the government's doing on sugar tax and I don't like that at all, I think it's insane, it won't make any difference. But the alternative, the Labour Party, they would have brought that in already.
Absolutely, but I do think, again, it's an easy target, therefore, to sort of set up at the government. I don't actually believe that the executives at Ben & Jerry's or Unilever are in any way woke at all. I just think they're very clever at being able to get their product into the mainstream, which is exactly what they've done. Because, as you say, only a small number of people, a minority, actually care about, sort of defending Ben & Jerry's on this point. But the issue is they're now out there in the public sphere. And this is the key thing. They're not going to back down, which most companies do when they're faced with the mob. They kowtow. But Ben & Jerry's, they're not going to. And that will stand them in good stead.
I'm all in favour of them not backing down if that's what they think. I just don't care what they think.